When you think about Vibram, chances are you start picturing a certain eye-catching pair of shoes that gained popularity just within the last decade and a half. But Vibram got its name almost a century ago by totally revamping the footwear industry with their durable, practical, and groundbreaking soles. The brand has infiltrated almost every closet in the Western world, but not necessarily for the better. The name Vibram comes from its founder, the Italian outdoorsman Vitale Bramani. And apparently, Vibrams are actually pronounced Vibram. Vibrams, like many rugged outdoor clothing companies, had their start in the mountains. In 1935, Bramani lost 6 of his crew during a severe snowstorm in the Italian Alps, a tragedy that he believes was primarily attributable to the ineffective footwear that they were wearing. Now, back in the day, mountaineers relied on leather hobnailed boots and felt bottom climbing shoes that didn't actually have insulation and could freeze over and become treacherously slippery. This is basically like hiking up a mountain in Ugg boots. Bramani was determined to create a safer alternative, and he used water and winter-proof vulcanized rubber to create the first ever rubber lug soles. Basically, heavy-duty thick soles with deep indentations for stability and traction. Those first soles were named the Caramato, Italian for tank treads, which remains a familiar and iconic design to this day that you might just have in your own closet. This revolutionary design was proven through and through when K2 was summited in 1954 using Vibram soles. From that point on, there was no denying that these were top-tier, hardy, and reliable soles that could enable humans to achieve the impossible. That's also a line that they should use on their website. Today, just as with Gore-Tex, that yellow honeycomb logo at the bottom of your boots has a sort of symbol of reliability to it. A comforting sign that your footwear probably won't betray you on the side of a mountain cliff somewhere, or when you're on your way to the corner store in a Canadian winter. Today, you would be hard-pressed to find a good pair of mountaineering boots that doesn't have some sort of Vibram technology in it. Vibram itself currently produces 40 million soles a year for over 1,000 companies worldwide, including New Balance, Scarpa, North Face, and yes, even UGG. So maybe you can summit K2 in Uggs. There will be a YouTube video of a YouTuber who summits K2 or Everest wearing Uggs. I can pretty much guarantee it. Of course, Vibram is far from a one-hit wonder. They've built a company off of their innovation. Their whole essence revolves around challenging what a shoe can be. To this end, they've continued to produce different soles for all sorts of occasions, outfitting not just mountaineers, but firemen and electricians, construction workers, soldiers, and even stylish urbanites like myself. I literally wore this shirt because it's like my favorite fancy shirt for this video to say that line. Now, Vibram, like many of these early outdoor companies, was about more than just a solid product. Vibram started getting involved with the green movement before it hit mainstream ubiquity. Back in 1994, when I was just barely learning to use the words that would eventually be coming out of my mouth non-stop until I made a job out of it, Vibram was pioneering the idea of recycled rubber soles. They came up with EcoStep, made from 30% rubber from production waste. Now, while 30% might not seem like the most impressive number you've ever heard, remember that this was the 90s. Greenwashing wasn't even a thing, and the concept of recycling was just starting to become popularized by big oil companies to make people feel like it was their responsibility to deal with the trash that their products were creating. If you don't know what I'm talking about there, just search Climate Town Recycling and you'll get your mind blown. In those 3 decades since, Vibram has continued to refine this process. And just recently, they came out with the latest iteration of EcoStep, which is 90% made out of natural materials, which they use in many of their famous Barefoot shoes, which I know a lot of you have been waiting for us to talk about. Now, we've covered Barefoot shoes in general in a previous video, but Vibram's role deserves some special attention. Their invention of toe shoes started a movement, albeit a fringe one, that is still going strong today. In the early 2000s, Vibram decided to shift away from their core focus on soles and work on a totally new style of shoe, a sort of foot glove, a true second skin, designed to let us walk more like we were built to walk, feeling the ground beneath our feet, spreading out our toes, and using our natural-born foot muscles instead of layers of artificial padding and support. All of this while providing classic Vibram grip and protecting you from that pile of Lego that your kid left on the floor last night. I don't have kids yet, but somehow I still relate to that.
I ain't nobody's daddy.
Vibram presented their 5 fingers design globally in 2006, and word spread pretty quickly about these shoes that could strengthen your muscles and provide balance, agility, posture, and range of motion and general foot health, which does make some intuitive sense. Our feet are amazingly complex things and designed to, well, walk. As a Cleveland clinic put it, barefoot running is in our DNA. And it really wasn't that difficult to convince much of the health-conscious athletic crowd that barefoot was the way to go. Soon after, people were writing best-selling books on the topic, and other companies were making their own minimalist shoes. That is, shoes with a thin, flexible sole, space for your toes, and no arch support. By 2012, the movement had demonstrably disrupted the footwear industry, claiming 15% of sales and challenging what a shoe could be. Now, amidst all of this glamour and recognition, there was one glaring problem that Vibram didn't think clearly through. Because they were the first to mass produce foot gloves, there was no real research on what they actually did to your feet. That sort of rigorous testing takes years, and you can't just make those kinds of health claims without scientific backing, at least not without risking a class action lawsuit, which is exactly what happened. In 2012, Vibram was sued for effectively making a buttload of money by making health claims with zero scientific backing and using that to ramp up their prices. Vibram denied any wrongdoing, but in 2014 decided to settle the lawsuit for $3.75 million in order to avoid further legal costs, and ended up offering customers up to $94 back on their purchase. Since then, they've learned to tread lightly when it comes to how they present themselves, and are legally obligated to refrain from making claims about strengthening muscles or reducing injury until such a time as the science actually backs that up. Now, just to be clear, because I know that there's a lot of people who like these shoes a lot, we are not saying that Vibram's claims were debunked, they just haven't been definitively proven. Now that these shoes have been a thing for like 16 years, scientists are starting to gain a clearer idea of what's actually going on with minimalist shoes. And so far, it kind of lines up with what Vibram's been telling us, although everyone still agrees that we need more studies. For now, it's looking like people who habitually wear minimalist shoes do tend to have stronger feet and much lower rates of flat feet than those who don mainstream shoes. These people also tend to run in a more efficient way as well, but the key word here is habitually. I'm talking about people who almost exclusively walk or run barefoot or in minimalist shoes and take the time to allow their feet and gait to adapt to this new shoe situation. There is a risk here of injury if you try to go full send into the au natural world too quickly. Wearing goofy-toed shoes once a month is not gonna do much for your personal health and well-being because you're just not used to it. It's like saying you're gonna get the body of your life by working out 1 day a week. It just doesn't work that way. Unfortunately, Vibram did not emphasize this at first, which contributed to that whole false advertising look and got people real mad when they did injure themselves.
How dare you?
Hence, now dedicating an entire page of their website to education on the matter. Health questions aside though, a bigger concern with 5 Fingers and their younger, more stylish, if lesser known sibling, Furoshiki, I guess is how it's pronounced, is that they don't really seem to jive with the rest of the Vibram image. Vibram's is in an interesting position because, with the exception of their minimalist shoes, their whole product line is centered around parts. A company like Apple that sells phones, etc., in their entirety is financially incentivized to keep parts out of the marketplace, so you just have to buy a whole new set of AirPods when the battery degrades. We have a whole other video about that one too. But Vibram's has made repair a core part of their values and their company ethos, except for the barefoot shoes. To give you an idea of how big of a deal repairability is to Vibram, you gotta understand how big this is. Vibram works with shoemakers all over the world to make their wares readily accessible for a quick resole. You can find footbeds and products from Vibram in every cobbler shop in the world almost. They then provide a handy cobbler locator on their website as a part of their whole Repair If You Care campaign, designed to encourage and educate people to make maintain their shoes instead of throwing them out at the first sign of wear. And the amazing part is that this repair mentality goes beyond Vibram products. There's this whole thing where Birkenstock's owners in particular will go out and swap their admittedly not that awesome Birkenstock soles for Vibram ones when they wear out, which is exactly what I did, and they are way better. So you have this massive career, this whole brand built off of this repair mentality, and then they make barefoot shoes. Does anyone else find it super ironic that a company that's all about durable, like, footbeds is now known for their deliberately minimalist, thin-soled footwear? Look, okay, I don't have anything against the idea of barefoot shoes, as long as they're not the ones with the little toes.
Put those grippers away!
But there is something strange about Vibram's involvement in that movement. While other big names like Barefoot will repair shoes in-house, although sadly that's only in the UK, there's no clear way of how to get your 5 fingers resoled. This is because they're obviously intentionally thin, and they can wear out really fast. You can probably patch them up a little bit to extend their life, but it does seem pretty off-brand. Now, Vibrams is often praised for their use of eco-material and their role in the proliferation of repairability culture within fashion, and yet their commitment to the cause is a little bit gray because of these barefoot shoes. On the sustainability front, Vibram has a lot of eco materials, but they are only incorporated into one part of their product line. And then at the same time, Vibram remains incredibly dependent on newly manufactured vulcanized rubber for a lot of their products. On top of this, Vibram doesn't really seem to provide any real guidelines for what to do with their products inevitably when they bite the dust. They might talk about recycling their own production waste, but they seem to ignore the end of life waste. And just like almost every big apparel company nowadays, the issue of transparency is a sticky one with Vibram. They've been criticized for making it difficult to verify just how ethical and sustainable their supply chain really is. They have factories in Italy and in the United States, but they also manufacture in China. And without any kind of trusted third-party certification, it's not easy to know what level of follow-through they have with the claims that they make. So here is our takeaway. We want to believe that Vibram loves the planet and the people on it because they have done a lot to make the industry better in the past. But when rubber meets the road, we can't put all of our hopes in big corporations. It's not always easy to discern a company's true motivations, and even those with the best intentions can't fully monitor their full supply chain and manufacturing process when it spans the entire freaking globe. And this is one of the reasons why we always recommend that you buy your stuff locally from a business who you can actually talk to face to face and build a relationship with. These are the people who can take the extra steps to make something truly sustainable that is better for you and for the planet. If you are interested in trying out the barefoot shoe thing, consider if you're willing to commit to minimalist shoes habitually. They may not be as life-changing as some of these barefoot shoes enthusiasts will tell you, but it doesn't seem like there's really any downsides, so go crazy. Now, I'm sure that the Vibram 5 fingers are a decent product, but I wouldn't recommend them. Instead, I would go with something from Barefoot. They have a lot of options, and they seem a little bit more stylish, as well as they're a certified B Corporation, which means that they have a third party that kind of confirms some of the standards and ethical practices that they claim to have. On top of this, they're also made in Portugal. And hey, if you're still here, the whole Future Proof gang wants to thank you for helping us reach 250,000 subscribers. We're just a small group of passionate people creating this kind of content for you, and we couldn't exist without your support. So thank you to everybody who's already subscribed, for liking our videos, for showing up every Wednesday. And if you are a part of the team, well, I guess we'll see you next Wednesday. Vibrams with my new shirt Vibrams.